I know today's topic is going to be a bit sensitive, but I'm just gonna say it. My hot take is kids don't owe their parents anything and parents owe their kids everything. Hey guys, what's up? Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, I'm Hamali and I talk about all the things that nobody wants to talk about while I do my makeup. I recently made a get ready with me on whether I want to have kids or not, and I'll link it here and in the description below. But basically, within the video I said, kids don't owe their parents anything and parents owe their kids everything. And for the most part, a lot of people actually agreed with me, which I was surprised because when I have said this in the past, there have been a lot of negative comments, but there were some people that left some comments like this. Someone said, I see it as my duty to give back to my parents and take care of them out of respect for all they did for me instead of leaving them after using all their money and hard work for my education, food, and house. They even come before my spouse and children, and because of them, I'm who I am. If they hadn't abandoned me during hard times in life, I wouldn't be here. I'm willing to forgive their wrongdoings as no one's perfect. I respect Asian and Arab culture so much for their respect and care for the elderly. Someone else said, if your parents would have thought of that, you wouldn't be here. Yes, having kids is a big responsibility, but if you bring them up properly, it's all good. I think when people hear me say that, they automatically assume that I hate my parents, that I'm selfish, that I don't care for them, that I have no respect for them, that if they ever needed me, I would have no problem leaving them hanging, and that is so far from the truth. So I hope you stick around and hear me out because I promise I'm not an asshole, okay? Like a lot of people, my parents were immigrants, and my parents made a ton of sacrifices to make sure they could provide me and my sisters with a better life than they had. Oftentimes in scenarios like mine, we physically watch our parents sacrifice so much, we see them struggle, but not only that, we were also constantly reminded of their sacrifices. There were so many times that if I was going against my parents' beliefs or wants or thoughts, that they would use those sacrifices against me, saying things like, oh, you don't understand, we've given up so much just for you guys to live this life that you have, blah, 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 blah. And it honestly just makes you feel so guilty to the point where you feel like you owe them for their sacrifices. I know for me, I went into this thought process of, man, they did so much for me, and without them, I wouldn't be where I am today. And so I owe them everything. And if I go against what they're saying, if I'm, arguing with them, whatever, then I'm being ungrateful. I am a bad child. Like, the least I could do for everything that they've done for me is just listen to them, just do whatever they want. I should sacrifice my wants, my needs, my hopes and dreams because they sacrificed so much for me. And this is the only way I can repay them. And as I got older, I learned that that thought process is so toxic. When I hit an age where I started to think about having kids and what my life would look like with kids, what it meant to be a parent, etc., I began to realize that being a parent is the hardest job in the world. And I came to understand that if you're not ready to take on the responsibility of providing your child with the best life possible, then you're not ready to be a parent. And I'm not just talking about making sure your kid survives. I'm talking about making sure your kid thrives as an adult, that they're fully equipped, not just financially and physically, but spiritually and emotionally as well. And when you sign up to be a parent, it is your duty to provide all of that for your kids. It's your responsibility. That is the job you signed up for. If you're not ready to provide that, then you shouldn't be a parent. Oftentimes, taking on the responsibility of parenting really does come with a lot of sacrifices. But again, it is part of your duty. That is what you're signing up for. And I think with a lot of our parents, they were just expected to have kids. They weren't really asked if they wanted them or not, or if they were ready for them or not. And so they had kids out of obligation rather than a genuine want to be a parent. They were just fulfilling societal expectations. And that's not to say they would have never wanted kids, but it's just to say that they probably weren't ready to have kids when they did because they didn't fully think it through. So now you have parents that are raising a child and also in this place of like giving up their hopes, dreams, wants, needs, whatever, when they weren't ready to. And what you see happen often when people aren't ready to take on the responsibility of being a parent and are just kind of like thrown into it is that there is a lot of underlying resentment against the child because they always feel like they have to put the child first and they may not be able to fulfill their own needs and wants. Again, this is not to say that the parent doesn't love the kid or that they regret the kid or whatever it is, but two things can be true at once. You can love your kid dearly and want to do everything for them and want to make all these sacrifices for them because that's your kid and you just want to see them do well. But at the same time, you can also be mourning the loss of your own life and your dreams and wants and aspirations. But because so many of our parents didn't have the language or understanding of how to feel their emotions, they weren't actually able to mourn those losses in a healthy way. It just ended up turning into more anger, resentment, regret. And I think that's why they tend to throw their sacrifices back in their children's faces because it's almost like, man, I did all of this for you and you're not going to be grateful. You're not going to listen to me. It goes into that like tit for tat situation because they're like, you owe me that for everything that I've done for you. They feel just angry that they had to do all of this, give up all of this, and not get anything in return. Again, because they just weren't ready at that point to have kids. If they were ready, they would understand that the parent-child relationship is never going to be 50-50 or anywhere close to 50-50. Like the parent's always going to give more than the child. And honestly, that is a hard pill to swallow. On top of that, a lot of them were taught an authoritarian style of parenting. And so that's how they tended to raise us. Authoritarian style of parenting is very much like you do as I say. I am your elder, you respect me, and what I say goes. So when you mix this type of parenting style with the resentment they're already feeling, you're fostering a relationship that's built on fear, guilt, and shame. Versus a style like gentle parenting emphasizes a relationship that's based on mutual empathy and respect. It teaches more positive discipline and model behavior. It's about guiding your child with respect rather than with control, which I think personally is just normal parenting. It shouldn't be called gentle parenting, but we're so used to the authoritarian style that gentle parenting seems like such a stretch. I mean, kids should always be treated with respect. I don't understand why they shouldn't. They're people. Side note, I just want to mention that gentle parenting and permissive parenting are not the same thing. Oftentimes people think like gentle parenting is just letting your kids walk all over you, never saying no to them, whatever. Like, no, that's not what it is. That's permissive parenting. Permissive parenting doesn't really set any boundaries or guide your children in a respectful way. It just allows your kid to do whatever they want and pretty much control you. That's not what I'm talking about. Gentle parenting is very different. It requires boundaries. It requires respect and empathy and teaching kids emotional intelligence. Anyways, I digress. Because a lot of us were raised on this authoritarian style of parenting, we were often manipulated and guilt-tripped by our parents to do the things that they wanted. And so we fall into this trap of doing things because we feel obligated to do them rather than doing things because we genuinely care and want to do them. And that really fosters unhealthy relationships with underlying tones of resentment and anger and frustration. And honestly, it can also lead to things like depression because you can feel so stuck in this position of feeling obligated to give back to your parents because you feel like they owe you something, but then also on the other side, feeling like it doesn't align with your own needs, wants, and desires. And it creates this internal battle in your head because you genuinely do appreciate them and love them, especially because they have given you such a great life and sacrificed so many things for you. But at the same time, it's so hard to sincerely practice that gratitude because you are constantly being manipulated and guilt-tripped and blackmailed that your love almost feels like it can no longer be genuine, that it is forced and obligated. It makes caring for your parents feel almost like a chore. As I learned all of this and really reflected on it, it made me question, is it really a sacrifice if my parents are going to constantly throw it back in my face? Because a sacrifice is about giving something up for the sake of something else that is of greater importance. And the person sacrificing shouldn't be expecting something in return. Otherwise, it's not a sacrifice. Then it's like a you owe me. Like, it just does not make sense if your parents are constantly saying, you know, I sacrifice XYZ for you, and so the least you can do is listen to me. The least you can do is take care of me when I'm older. The least you can do is XYZ. At that point, it's just not a sacrifice anymore. It's more like a favor they expect a return on. If you expect something in return, it's not being done from a place of genuine love and care. And that's not to say our parents didn't genuinely love us or care for us. It's just that they weren't capable of understanding and expressing their emotions properly. So they took it out in the only way they knew how, which was through an authoritarian style of parenting where they manipulated and guilt tripped and shamed you. Because oftentimes that's probably how they grew up as well. So now as the child, when you think about taking care of your parents or doing anything for them, listening to them, whatever, it comes from a place of indebtedness instead of genuine love and gratitude. And that is a very slippery slope that will lead you into a place of anger, resentment, guilt, shame, sadness, just frustration, just all of it. And because we've been raised this way, we've been manipulated into thinking that doing these things for our parents is showing a form of gratitude when it's really not. Gratitude is a feeling. It comes from within. It is not something that can be forced onto someone. You want to be approaching your relationships from a place of gratitude instead of indebtedness. With gratitude, you're actually able to appreciate the kindness and love and help that you received. Gratitude is positive. It's uplifting. It fosters warmth and enhances relationships. Indebtedness, on the other hand, stems from a place of obligation. It makes you feel like it is your duty to repay a favor. And I think you see that in comments like this, where people feel like it is their duty to forgive and forget and just give back to their parents. And personally, I don't think that's healthy because it ends up shoving aside your own emotions. And you may feel like you're doing a good thing by forgiving and forgetting and putting your feelings aside and, putting your parents first and taking care of them no matter how poorly they treated you or how bad they made you feel. But when you do that, those feelings don't just go away. They end up being suppressed. And oftentimes you will find yourself repeating the same cycle as your parents. You'll expect your children to listen to you and owe you because you did the same for your parents. So why shouldn't your children do the same for you? I cannot stress this enough. It is so important to address those conflicting feelings that you are having internally so that you can free yourself from operating from a place of like indebtedness, fear, guilt, shame, and oh shit, I think I put way too much. This is a lot. Oh my God. Okay, I think I'm gonna, Anyways, as I was saying, it is so important to acknowledge those conflicting feelings that you have inside, because then you can actually live in your truth and operate from your authentic self rather than constantly operating from a place of fear, guilt, shame, and indebtedness, because eventually that will eat you alive. You have to address these emotions so that you can hold space for your reality and accept it for what it was. And sometimes that requires you to hold space for two different feelings. In this case, it might be that you genuinely are grateful and appreciative and love your parents for everything they've done for you, and at the same time feel hurt because they made you think that you were a burden for the sacrifices they made. I promise you, all of that can be true at once. Personally, for me, it wasn't until I acknowledged these things, healed from them, and came to a place of radical acceptance that I could genuinely approach my relationship with my parents with actual love and care. Just to be very realistic, healing these parts of yourself is not easy by any means. It requires a lot of honesty and difficult conversations and bringing up emotions that you may have suppressed for the longest time. Also, you may feel like you already know these things, but I just want to point out that knowing something and feeling something are two very different things. There was a long time in my life where I knew these things, but I didn't actually feel them. And it wasn't until I felt them that I was able to approach my relationship with my parents in a totally different light. And I think also when you are caring for someone or doing something for someone out of love versus indebtedness, they can feel that. Even if you're not emotionally intelligent, people can always pick up on vibes. It's exactly why you have those conflicting feelings of feeling indebted to your parents while also feeling grateful for them and loving them. So really be mindful of that, because the language you choose to use can really change your perspective on how you approach a situation. If you feel like like it's your duty or that you're obligated to take care of your parents or show gratitude towards them, you're going to be operating from a very low vibration. You're going to be operating from a place of fear, guilt, and shame. Versus if you're saying things like, I get to take care of my parents, I love to take care of my parents, I want to take care of my parents. It comes from a place of gratitude. It fosters warmth and connection, and it enhances a relationship. Before I end off this video, I need to say that operating from this mindset will require you to put yourself first and set boundaries. That might be really difficult for a lot of people because they'll feel guilty thinking that it's selfish, but I just need to remind you that it's not. You cannot pour from an empty cup. I also need to mention that everything I talked about in this video comes from a place of gratitude and privilege. My journey and the processes I described couldn't have happened if my parents weren't the type of people that would grow with me and forgive me and continue to show up in ways that were uncomfortable for them because I did challenge them a lot. And that's not to say my parents are perfect and they've done a 180, but I have seen growth in them and I have seen a lot of change. And I know that there are parents out there that aren't like that and they continue to be very toxic and they continue to manipulate and guilt trip and instill fear into their child. And I also understand I had access to things like therapy and living in my own home and a good support system. Having those things in your life, although they should be a necessity, are a privilege for a lot of people. So I totally recognize that. I try to make these videos for people that don't have access to those privileges because I also think you deserve to hear these conversations and feel some type of support and be told that what you're feeling and what you're doing isn't wrong. And I just hope my videos guide you in a way that serves you better and helps you live a happier life. Anyways, to sum it all up, I stand by what I said. I don't think kids owe parents anything, but the hope is that they can get to a place where they genuinely want to give back and want to care for their parents, and that it comes from a place of sincerity and gratitude rather than a place of indebtedness, guilt, and shame. So with all that being said, you know the drill. This is the final look. There are some products that I use that I might not be able to link on my LTK, but everything else will be linked on my LTK. The link is in the description below. I will try to find as many substitutes for something that is as close for products that I can't link. If you have any topics that you want me to cover in my next Get Ready With Me, or if you want to ask me questions or ask for advice, let me know in the comments below or send me a message on Instagram. I've also linked my Instagram in the description. And of course, if you like this video, please do not forget to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to my channel and maybe even share it with a friend that needs it. As always, thank you guys so much for watching and I'll see you in my next Get Ready With Me. Bye, I love you.